right. Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is a smaller group than I was expecting, which is fine. And I think we'll get to have maybe a little bit more in-depth conversation because we're a small group, and we'll get to know each other really well. So that's fun. Like Donna said, I am with the Center for Women and Families. The center is this region's provider of services to individuals and families impacted by domestic violence and/or sexual assault. So we get folks who have already been impacted by violence. We are a shelter, we offer counseling, therapy, support groups, case management. So we see people who are already in that stage of an unhealthy relationship. Maybe it's not their first unhealthy relationship. Many of our clients have kids. Many of those kids are JCPS students. We know that one of the biggest risk factors for experiencing or perpetrating violence later in life is seeing it growing up. So that is why we have made a really big investment as an agency in violence prevention. And part of violence prevention is going out into schools and reaching kids while we can still kind of mold some of those thoughts and behaviors to reduce rates of violence. Like Donna said, it's great, but not maybe as effective as we would like it to be to visit a health class once and talk about healthy relationships. So that's why this partnership, one reason why this partnership is really exciting is that we're giving you all the tools to figure out how this fits in to your classes and how this might connect to your students. So we're going to go over at least one activity from each skill section, except for standard one. So analyzing influences, accessing information, using communication, decision making, setting goals, practicing health enhancing behaviors, and advocating. You all will see and or facilitate yourselves by the end of the day, at least one of those activities, or one activity from each of those sections. And then you will have access to the whole packet of activities, I think electronically, Donna, is that correct?
For sure.
Okay.
Electronically, but yeah, for sure electronically.
Okay, for sure electronically. And so in each section, there are at least 2, sometimes up to 8 different activities you can pick and choose from, depending on what's going to work for your students. A lot of them are developed by the Center for Women and Families. Some of them we adapted from other sources. Speaking personally and really speaking on behalf of the center, we want you to adapt those to what's going to speak to your students. So if there are examples given, if there are modifications that you want to make to the activities, I invite and encourage you to do that. What we've given you, I hope, is a helpful template, but yeah, we want you to do what it is you need to do to make sure those messages reach your students. Okay, so like Leanne said earlier, I am not the expert here on middle and high school education. My degree was in English, so I really like books. I remember what it was like to be in high school. That's the expertise that I am bringing, as well as the expertise in violence prevention. But I really want to hear from you all about how is this going to work? Will you change? Would you change in your setting? And how do you think this will go for your students? So these are our learning objectives. This is what I'm hoping you take away from our day. We're going to talk a little bit about experiential learning. Again, I'm not an education expert, so we're not going to get deep into theory or anything like that. I'm just going to share with you all some practical principles of that. And then you'll walk away, I hope, prepared to discuss dating relationships as part of your health curriculum, and then to engage some new facilitation skills. Sound good? All right. I'm curious if there is anything in particular you all are hoping to take away from today's training. Any questions you want answered? Anything in particular that you're hoping we will cover?
Mm-hmm. So, didn't exactly ask the question you just want me to ask, but my question is to figure things out. Do you guys go into, or is the center actually having children and the moms stay in a safe place?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the question was about the center's shelter. Yes, our shelter is a secure space.
Okay.
People stay there anywhere from 2 weeks to several months. Families, so survivor and any kids or dependents stay there together. Shelter is not the only thing that we do either.
Right, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if you just educate and go and help and provide all the services, or if they're actually, you're with the group, the moms and children.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you
Okay.
rephrase
No,
it?
I was just wondering, are you guys?
Did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to visualize, are they living at their own houses and you guys are going out and providing services at their
Mm-mm.
house?
We
or
have
is
one
there a
shelter.
center?
Mhm.
Okay.
2 shelters, one in
How
southern
many?
Indiana, one in, it's really close to here. It's on 2nd and Breckenridge, and we have space for about 75 to 85 individuals there.
Okay.
So that includes the children. Yeah.
Are they required while they're at the shelter to come and be educated?
They all have the opportunity to. Our advocates offer a whole lot of different learning and support group opportunities. And we don't have really strict like programmatic requirements of people in shelter because they're coming out of a situation, as we're going to see with unhealthy relationships, they're coming out of a situation where they have been controlled and coerced in a lot of ways. So we try to remove the kind of coercive requirements that are sometimes there, but we encourage them to take advantage of opportunities to learn while they're there. Good question. So any hopes, dreams, wishes for today's training? Beyond just learning about healthy relationships? All right. I usually don't spend a whole lot of time on ground rules, so I will give you all my 3 that I always bring. You can add more if you like. 1, participate in the way that's comfortable for you. It's going to be a long day if it's just me up here talking the whole time, so please ask questions, add comments. Minimize phone and computer use. I know our jobs continue happening even while we're in this space learning, so and life continues happening. So if you need to take a phone call, send an email, something like that, we do have breaks built in. If it's urgent, I won't be offended if you step out for a minute, but please come back. And please stay present while you're in this room. And then the last one, trauma is prevalent, take care of yourself and others. So what we are going to be talking about today is common. So some of the unhealthy relationship behaviors are things that have shown up for our students in their own lives, in the lives of their parents or caregivers, and maybe in some of our own personal lives as well. So if we talk about a subject that hits a little too close to home for you and maybe makes you feel uncomfortable in a way that interferes with your learning, I invite you to take care of yourself in that moment. If that means stepping out and taking a break, that's totally fine. If you just want to opt out of an activity, that's totally fine as well. So I trust you all to know what it is you need to do to stay present and learn. Can we all agree to these things? Okay. Is there anything else you all would add? Anything else you need to feel comfortable learning today? All right. So, since we've gone over all the technical stuff, I'm going to start us off with one of the activities from our curriculum. And this is, ignore the numbers in here because they don't line up with what's on that poster. So this is from the Practicing Health Enhancing Behaviors section. To do this activity, I will need you all to stand up. And find a partner. It can be anyone. Could you participate? Yeah. Megan's going to participate in a lot of activities because there are an uneven number of you all.
All
right. So once you have your partner, introduce yourself if you don't know each other already. Okay. And then with your partner, decide who is going to be A and who will be B. It doesn't matter who is who. All right. So you all see probably this kind of crooked line on the floor made in tape up here. I would like for the A people to come and stand just right at this line, right here. And I'm going to do a little bit of furniture rearranging, make some more room for us.
Oh, yeah.
Could you help me move
Sure.
this maybe over here?
That way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I was like,
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. Hand. Okay. Could you move right here, just so we have a little bit more room? All right. And bees will. Let's see. I'm going to take 5 steps. Bees stand around right here.
Across from our partners.
Yes, stand across from your partner. All right. So the name of this activity is Walk Towards Me. So what do you think we're going to do? Exactly. So the goal of this activity is to help us start thinking about how we set our own boundaries. Okay? How do we decide how close we let people get? And we're illustrating that through physical proximity, but we're going to connect it at the end to thinking about how do we set boundaries with what we tell other people, what we share with them, and things like that. Okay? So, A, you all are going to stay stationary. When I say go, your partner will start walking towards you. When they are close enough, and that's up to you, but when they're as close as you would want them to be to just have a normal conversation, just put your hand up, okay? B, when you see that hand go up, you have to stop immediately. Okay? Are the instructions clear? All right. This may feel a little bit weird, and that's okay. But again, it's connected to a broader learning goal, so humor me.
I'm thinking
All right.
our teenagers doing this will definitely humor us.
Okay? And they will. They will.
Some of them will let you
Just
go.
dive right in.
Yeah.
The last time I did it in middle school, it was.
No, they'll be all up in there.
So I have a question for you all, and thank you for reminding me of a part of the instructions that I forgot. Why do you think we have this line on the floor?
They can't cross it.
Right. So bees, what you are not going to do is cross this line, and we are also not going to touch each other in this activity. Okay? So this activity is just about how close are you all A's comfortable with someone having a conversation with you. Okay? All right. Everybody ready? All right. Bees, start walking. All right. So just take a minute, notice the proximity or lack thereof. Okay? And there's no wrong answer here. Sometimes we want to have a conversation with somebody who's 5 feet away from us, and that's okay. All right. So now we'll switch. So B's will come up to the line. A's will line up about 5 steps away. And yeah, you might want to adjust your speed as walking, so that A can maybe feel it out a little bit more when they want to pause you. Okay, so go ahead and start walking. All right. Donna and Leanne are great friends. They're close talkers. All right. So that concludes the physical portion of this activity. So y'all can go ahead and sit down.
I think it's interesting that the one pair that was 2 men, they were always the furthest apart. Like just
Interesting.
the closeness of a man to man.
Sure.
I think it's different.
Okay.
I think it's interesting how your expectations of how close you think someone can get to you it changes as soon as it actually happens. Once you got up real close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I take try this again?
Yeah. So thank you all both for saying that. Any other observations? Yeah.
I was just thinking when we were doing that, you know, for instance, if we're close friends, I've seen her for a while, at first it might have been a hug, but then I would want her to step back for a comfortable feel too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great that you noticed that as well. Awesome.
One thing, kind of being cognizant of somebody else's, respectful of somebody else's boundaries.
Yeah.
You know, one person gets to be in charge, the other one is kind of receptive to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Without saying anything, but just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thinking about it, I think it's actually hard for anybody to just It's not really hard, but a lot of people don't think about setting that boundary. Because when I have conversations with other people, I think about they keep getting closer to me, and I keep backing up. Like, why
That
you
is
keep
a
cutting
great,
close to me?
yeah,
So
that's a great point.
that we generally don't even set that boundary.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting because it's true. Like, so in an everyday situation, if someone's too close to you, you just kind of back up. You don't say anything. You don't give them the actual communication of what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But I have special needs students, and I always set that boundary with them. So it's interesting how, like, the acceptance of, like, being able to tell someone, like, this is our boundary,
Mhm.
like,
Who you tell, who you
and
don't
who
tell.
you won't tell. Like,
Mhm.
if your comfort level of not telling someone.
Mm-hmm. All very, very good observations and very good kind of connections to broader themes. So, great. So what I'm hearing from you all is that, well, let me ask you all a question. Did this feel kind of weird to do? Hi, Diane. Okay, and that's okay. There is room for that. It's okay to feel weird. Why do you think this felt weird? I'm starting to hear it from you all, but why did it feel weird to experience boundaries in such an explicit way?
I have the tendency to think that this is disrespectful. Like,
Mhm.
don't put your hand up to me type
Yeah.
of thing. Like, so.
Yeah, I think that's a norm that a lot of people share. If we tell someone to stop in a really direct way, that can feel uncomfortable.
I don't feel like the B's had any control.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the A, you had, like you kind of said, you have all the control.
Great point. Great point. So boundaries are not just one person stating them, right? Boundaries are communicated between two people or more than two people, and they're negotiated, right? And we kind of feed off of each other to establish that. Okay. Let me go to my questions list. So we talked about what we noticed. This is a question for personal reflection. If you want to share some thoughts, you can, but I'm going to give you a minute just to think over it to yourself quietly. How did you decide personally when to say stop? So just think about that for a minute. Anybody willing to share their personal reasons? I don't mean that you have to tell a personal history or story, but just what made you decide when to say stop?
I would just say comfort.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I
Yeah.
can have a conversation at that distance.
Mhm.
I have to be nose to nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's comfortable for us, what we're accustomed to. Were you going to add
I
something?
would say
see
an
your
arm's
hand.
distance away.
Yeah.
Like that to me, because if I want to make our connection more, I can touch the person, but I can also not.
Mhm.
So that's how I kind of choose.
Yeah. Yeah. So arm's distance away is pretty good standard. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was also thinking of what my partner was thinking.
Mhm.
So I was like, she's close enough for me, but in her mind, is she too close to me?
Yeah.
So I was kind of just looking at her body language as she was walking towards me.
Yeah, so trying to intuit what's going on for that other person. That's a great point, right? So boundaries are not just about what's comfortable for me. It's also about how is this impacting this other person, right? Or it can be about that. Sometimes boundaries are just about ourselves. Sometimes it is about that other person. Okay, any other reflections or thoughts right now?
This would be a great icebreaker for the beginning of the year to set those boundaries for
Yeah.
the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you see that application. So a good icebreaker. It might be a good thing to revisit, right? As folks get to know each other, have a discussion about how boundaries shift, right? Because they do. Okay. So here's the part where I remind you of the goal of this activity and the lesson behind it, that everyone has different boundaries, right? You all stopped at roughly the same point, but there were a couple inches difference, I would say, in between where you all, where your partners asked you to stop. Boundaries can be instinctive. We kind of just know for ourselves when someone's getting too close, and we try to intuit what that other person might be thinking and feeling. What might be an experience that would help, not help, what might be an experience that would strengthen our boundaries or give us really rigid boundaries and make it hard for us to let people in close?
You mean from like the background the kids will bring? So
Yeah.
like you're saying like violence and
Yeah.
abuse.
Exactly. Exactly.
Trust issues.
Yeah, so a lot of your students are coming in with histories of family violence or abuse towards themselves, and those can mess with our boundaries in ways that mean our boundaries are really. Are we all good with the poster? No, it is not your fault. You're all good. You're being
While we're doing
proactive.
some
Thank you.
housekeeping, can everybody silence their phone? I keep hearing an alert thing.
That might be my phone.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. So, how might an experience like abuse influence your boundaries?
I've seen it where there are kids who have been abused and they get very clingy. So it's important to set that boundary. Or you have those kids who has been abused and they want to stay away from you. So I've seen both sides.
Yeah, and one thing that I heard you say in a little bit earlier is that oftentimes we learn what our boundaries are by having them crossed, right? And that leads us to maybe put up a stronger wall or boundary, or just to let it down completely and become clingy or really quick to become attached or let people in. Okay. So, one more question for you all. So, this activity was about physical boundaries, right? How close we feel another person that we maybe know or don't know very well should get when we're having a conversation with them. When we are thinking about sharing personal details, so say your student asked you, "How was your weekend?" How would you respond to them? Would you tell them a lot about what you did? A little bit? Anything?
The
Okay.
positive things.
The positive
The general
things.
positive things.
Right, right. But you're not going to tell them probably, well, I had to cut my grass and fix all this stuff that's wrong with my house and tell them all about what it means to be an
I guess
adult.
it just depends, because it depends on the morale in your classroom. If it's comfort level, like most of my kids will ask, like, did you have class this weekend? What did you learn? So I guess it just depends. If it's the beginning of the year, no, it was a good weekend. But it just depends on what time of the year it is.
Yeah, great point. So it's about morale, it's about the relationship you have built with them or are building, right? And what if one of your colleagues asks, how was your weekend? Are you going to share with them a different amount of information?
If I like them.
If you like
That's
them.
exactly what I was
Depends
gonna
on the
say.
colleague.
Yeah, good. What about if your student, say they really like you and you're a role model for them and they ask you for a hug? What do you do?
Side
Side hug.
Yeah.
Side hug, yes.
Some of them I hand hug,
Mhm.
some of them I side hug.
Side hug, high five maybe,
Yeah.
okay. What if a colleague of the opposite gender as you asked you for a hug? Usually,
Depends on the relationship.
Yeah.
depends on the relationship. A colleague of the same sex as you?
Still
Still the
Still the same?
relationship, yeah.
Yeah. And a friend of the same sex?
I'm a hugger.
I'm a hugger too. so.
And that's why it's so hard for me, like, not to even hug my kids, because I know how important that simple touch is, but it, like, sometimes I just forget and I still give them hugs, but.
Sometimes our own personal values, understanding how important that physical touch is and how some students aren't getting that at home,
Yeah.
our values can maybe come in conflict with what our professional ethics are, and we have to set some boundaries that don't feel great. Yeah. So I heard a lot of the women in the room saying, yes, I would hug a friend of the same sex. Men, is that something you all do?
Probably maybe an arm around them. Depends on, I mean, if it's a loss of a loved one or
Yeah.
something like that. it
Depending on the
depends
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you all are bringing up a lot of great points about how our boundaries are different with, in the context of so many factors. What's going on for this person? What's going on for me? What is our relationship? How long has our relationship existed? And who are we, right? How will this be perceived by other people? So that's just a quick exercise in getting to know your own boundaries as a health enhancing behavior, right? We have to offer those opportunities to really make it clear what we mean by boundaries and give students a chance to experience what that feels like.
Caitlin, just so I know whether to take notes or not, thinking about the lesson I'll implement, are these kind of things that you're asking us already written down and handed to us, or do we need to record? Okay.
Yes. So we're about to get to talking a little bit about experiential learning, but yes, these kinds of reflection questions are offered within the lessons because it's not enough just to do an exercise like this. We have to really make it clear what we want students to take away or really engage what they have learned or observed through this experience in order for it to be effective.
I don't want to waste not writing it down and then have to go home and rethink, how do I want to run the lesson when I can run it right now in my head.
Yeah. So the reflection is built in.
Okay.
Our intention with crafting these lessons was not to give you all a script that you have to stick really closely to, but to give you enough material that you feel like you can do the thing and then reflect about the thing with your students. All right, so has anybody heard this term experiential learning before? Is it familiar to you all? Okay, I see some nods. Does anybody feel like you have a good definition of what experiential learning means?
Learning through participation.
Learning through participation. It's a great, concise definition. So I want to reinforce that I'm not an educator by education. I'm not an expert on experiential learning. What I am sharing with you all is kind of what I have gleaned through various trainings. So I'll be happy to provide more resources for you if you do want to get to know the theory behind this, but I'm really just talking about practical applications right now. So one definition that I found for experiential learning is that it means learning from experience or by doing. It first immerses learners in an experience and then encourages reflection about the experience to develop new skills, new attitudes, or new ways of thinking. So what was the experience that we just had as part of that activity?
Learning how to create boundaries.
So I would say the learning how to create boundaries was the skill we developed or the skill that we practiced. The experience itself was just the walking towards each other, right? That's the experience, and then the learning part is what you highlighted, calling attention to what a boundary is. Another way of looking at it, could I get a volunteer to read this definition? Just shout it out if you want to read it.
I'll read it. Is it the whole thing?
Do you mind reading the
No,
whole
that's fine.
Sound like something our student would say.
Yeah.
I'm reading the whole thing.
Experiential learning is learner-centered. That is, it implies that learning is more of a process the learner goes through than the delivery of knowledge or skills by an educator or trainer. While facts are facts, and there are correct and incorrect perceptions of the facts, the application of information to one's life or work is a subjective experience. An effective educator, therefore, should be highly skilled in facilitation, the asking of questions that enables participants to digest material and experience, reach conclusions based on the material, and make decisions on how to apply what is learned.
Thank you. So, I have my favorite part of this definition underlined, but what do you all take away from this?
It's more than just giving them information.
More than
Very
just giving
hands-on.
information. Sorry?
Very hands-on. Well, it's learning, so no students in there. So a lot about discovery, like self-discovery, also included with this.
Self-discovery and hands-on. Yeah.
I like the asking questions to make decisions about what was learned, and apply what was learned.
Yeah. So asking questions to make decisions about what was learned. Awesome. Any other takeaways?
I like the idea of one's experience, like, because different people experience and perceive and process information in different ways, and to be able to share that. So I like that part.
Yeah, so our perceptions about what we go through are influenced by who we are and our histories. So to be able to engage all those different perceptions can be really effective. Awesome. So this goes back to what Donna said earlier, that the way we have been doing health education has been very content-based, right? We have the drug and alcohol section, the nutrition section, the physical activity or exercise section, and all of that information is very important, right? We want our students to be taking away all that information, but if we're not giving them the tools, or if we're not constructing our lessons in a way that gives them the tools to figure out how does this apply to me right now in my life, not 20 years from now, not 5 years from now, but right now with what I'm going through. If we're not giving them the space, the opportunities, the tools to create those connections, then we don't know, right? We don't know how effective that information might be. I can tell you all, I don't remember anything from my health class in high school. So when I shadowed the sex education training, I actually saw my high school health teacher, Mr. Jackson from Manual. And that's not a reflection on his teaching, but I was 14 years old, and I had acne and braces, and I was very awkward, and I was just trying to get through the day. And I didn't want to hear about nutrition. I don't remember anything because I wasn't instructed on how this applies to me right now, right? So, what I'm not saying with this definition, though, is that content learning isn't important, right? So who we're trying to reach through experiential learning are the kids who need to personally experience what we're talking about to be motivated to learn, which is many high schoolers, right, and middle schoolers. They need to see that personal relevance and personally experience it. So experiential learning is mainly a theory developed for adult education. So I'm bringing some of the principles in here, but also keeping it pretty loose because we're educating adolescents and teens, not adults. But this is also something we see showing up with learners who have trouble with the formal classroom, need alternative learning methods, who've been removed from traditional classrooms for a long time, or just any learner who benefits from having those hands-on examples. So how are we doing it? We build in opportunities for students to get an understanding of why we're doing these activities. So with the Walk Towards Me example, we talked really explicitly about why did we do this? What did we observe? What did we learn? Students have opportunities to express, engage, and reflect on what is personally relevant for them. And in doing so, they become the origin of their own learning, right? They engage what's going on for them right now, and they learn from that experience. Students feel safe to make mistakes, and we treat mistakes as learning opportunities. And you as the instructor are a guide and a resource. You are the content expert, but you are also there to facilitate their learning.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, how do you, I feel like this is deeper than this, but how do you make students feel safe to make mistakes? Because this is something that I face my kids all the time. If they do something and they mess up, they kind of shut down and they're like, well, I wasn't trying.
Yeah.
Like that's their excuse. Anything they do, well, I wasn't trying. Like they can't accept that, like they can't accept failure whatsoever.
Yeah. Does anybody else have that struggle? Students shut down when they make a mistake and
They said they would rather not try
Yeah.
to fail. And so one thing I've learned is just to let them know that I'm human too and I make mistakes. So
Yeah.
if I didn't do well on a test or I didn't do well on my last paper, what could I improve? I think just, experience.
Yeah. I think, so what I'm hearing from you, Diane, is students are afraid to experience failure when the stakes are high. grades, papers, things like that. I think we build up their
Resilience.
the resilience and feeling safe to make mistakes by engaging activities like these where, you know, it's okay to say what you think. It's okay to, you know, give a response that maybe is different than everybody else's, and to really engage in discussion around that. Like, why do we all have different opinions about that? I think that's a way to connect to this idea that yes, there are right and wrong answers. There is doing well and doing poorly in a classroom setting. Let's figure out how you learn how to advocate for yourself and be confident in other settings first. Does that make sense?
A little bit, I mean, it's everything. Like
Yeah.
in PE class, it could be in the parking lot and they couldn't get the door open while we're trying to get it open. Like, I mean, it's just like this whole, like their whole life is around this, I'm not gonna try because I don't wanna fail.
Yeah. Does anybody else have advice around that?
I talk to my kids, you know, about making mistakes. And I mean, I don't know if it comes from the perspective I coach, but every single one of us, we're now adults, but we can look back to some of our most opportunistic times for growth is going through mistakes, going through trials and pitfalls and falling on our face and, you know, learning from that. And, you know, it's painful to go through, you know, mistakes and, you know, to have some shortfalls, but later on, I mean, you're gonna benefit. You're gonna reap a harvest, you know, from those mistakes. Not be so thin-skinned and have such a veneer like we're so fragile we can't make a mistake, because it's gonna benefit you. It doesn't seem pleasant at the time, but later on, it's gonna benefit whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult. But you know, and just allowing them, hey, feel free to make some mistakes. And you're going to grow from it. You're going to improve from it. And now that's easier said than done. They're still pretty reluctant. But I think over the course of a year, you know, I think they see the value in, hey, not being so fearful of screwing up or making mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. So modeling.
Yeah.
We all got to the point in our life where we are more or less, we are adulting successfully, I think.
Yeah.
But we didn't get there without making mistakes. So engaging them with that relationship, I think it's also useful to offer some opportunities for reflection on when they have made mistakes, right? Have them think about it.
I think, well, I address the fear factor. It's there because it's more so than being fearful of failing. So there's like this really good video Will Smith did. He was talking about fear, and so I played that, and they have to do like reflection because, you know, that's kind of what we do. We live our lives in fear, but we don't really get to experience the things that actually do shape us. So I just kind of play it off that in that realm.
Yeah.
And we can't be fearful of everything, and failure is one of those things we can't fear.
Yeah. I'm glad that you used the word fear because I'm sure you all as JCPS teachers have had trauma-informed care training or have heard the term trauma-informed care in some way. And when we operate from that trauma-informed space, that helps us remember that fear is really powerful, right? Of trauma, it causes fear, right? And it causes us to react out of fear. And I think a lot of our students are experiencing trauma, or maybe just stress every day, and being constantly bombarded with stress, and they are just neurologically operating out of that place of fear. You all as health teachers alone can't necessarily help them build up those responses and resiliency that help them stop and notice that fear and react differently. So it's a whole culture shift, but I think naming that as fear, like it's okay to be afraid of making mistakes, but it's also okay to make them. But yeah, just validating that fear is very powerful, right? And being afraid to make a mistake is very powerful. And we understand that. It's still okay and even encouraged to go that way because that's how we learn. Any other thoughts right now? Thank you for bringing up that question. That's the kind of thing that I don't have the answers to, because I'm not in your all's shoes as teachers, and you all see on the front lines every day what is going on. But I think it does have a lot to do with school culture and also engaging what is going on at home for kids and what's going on outside of school. So I'll keep thinking about that and maybe try to come up with some helpful responses. I did want to make one note before we move on. I'm not here to discount the importance of traditional content or knowledge learning. I think there is still a place for that. We couldn't have learned anything like mathematical concepts, new languages. We couldn't learn that without classroom knowledge-based learning. I am choosing to engage experiential learning, and I built this model into the activities that we created because with something like healthy relationships, you can't just tell a student you need to be in a respectful relationship, right? We have to engage what they think respect looks like and feels like, and help them kind of interpret, well, is that really respect? What is the outcome of that going to be for you and that other person? So we have to engage them on what's going on for them right now, right? What is their definition of a healthy relationship? How do you get it? How do you show up in a healthy relationship? And we have to start there, right? So we can't just say, here's a list of healthy relationship qualities, make sure your partner checks all these boxes. We really have to engage that current experience. Okay. So experiential learning tends to follow a cycle. So there's the experience, right? The do it part. You just do an activity that involves something physical, or it could be something like a group project. Some of the activities are worksheets to start with. So you could make anything into an experiential learning activity. The learning part comes from the what, so what, and now what stages in this process. So I encourage you to apply this to other lessons you might be teaching. But engage the experience, reflect on what. So just establish what happened, what were the results, what did you notice, how did it make you feel? The so what do these results imply? How did I influence the outcome? So connection to a broader context. And then now what? What will I do differently next time? Or what decision am I making based on what I observed in this activity about how I'm going to apply this information in my life? Okay? So do it, do the experience, talk about what happened, talk about the so what, talk about the now what. This is another way of looking at that experiential learning cycle that I thought looked a little bit more technical. So there's the activity, you share your reactions and observations, process maybe some of the larger patterns or dynamics, develop real-world principles from that, and then plan your use of this learning. All right, so we're going to apply this now, this experiential learning cycle. We're going to do it twice, actually. We're going to watch 2 videos. And this is just to get you thinking about how do you develop questions that you might ask of your students to process an experience. So I'm going to show you all a quick, it's like 30 seconds, it's a PSA, it's called That's Not Cool. And then we're going to just come up with some questions that fit into those what, so what, and now what cycles. Okay, so we're not really going to discuss this in depth, we're just going to come up with some of the questions that you would ask your students to discuss this.
G-morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey, text me. Are your parents home later? We can hang. L-U-V, love you. JK. Holla back, holla back, holla back. Are you with your friends? That's lame. We're in a huge fight right now. XO. This is something I did. Good Lord. Only nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
That was overwhelming.
Okay, I'm going to show it one more time because it is kind of short. So I'll watch it again and then come up with some questions.
G morning, sunshine. Wakey, wakey, text me. Are your parents home later? We can hang. LUV, love you. JK. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you with your friends? That's lame. We're in a huge fight right now. XO. Did you dream of something I did? Are you on your way to the lonely? Nude pics. Send me some. Text me.
All right. So, quick PSA there. So you showed this.
Twice because I had to make the connection. This is the same guy
Yeah.
hitting up the same girl throughout the whole thing.
Mhm.
And I did, but then when I watched it the second time, I could already know that's what's happening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that's
Definitely showing it twice needs to be online.
that's a good thing to know about your students. Is are they going to pick up on these things? Okay. Well, okay. I think I'm getting ahead of myself with this activity. Let's just discuss this video through the lens of that cycle that I just introduced to make sure you all are comfortable with it, and then we'll watch the other video and do some additional work on that. So, our experience watching this video, watching it twice. In the what phase of the experiential learning cycle, that's where we ask those questions that just engage the experience. What happened during the experience? So, what happened in this video?
Harassment.
Okay, so harassment. How do you know that?
Well, one, he asked for new photos, but even before that, like, he's constantly just like over and over again.
So there's, he's asking for nude pictures. Before that, he's just texting really constantly. So I would say that term harassment, that I would agree that this is harassment. That is more of a conclusion that we are drawing as adults with knowing what harassment looks like. How do you think your students would respond to that question of what happened in this video?
At first, it seemed like, oh, they're just dating, this normal
Yeah.
texting. It's not until it goes on in the video when you notice, like, even not with her family, what you should notice by then, like, I'm at the dinner table with my family, that's where I should be engaged. But I think you don't notice it until she's, like, with her friends. And then it's like, oh, you're hanging out with your friends and not me. Then you're like, what?
Yeah.
And then it's like, huh? Why is that a problem?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
They would say he was very clingy.
Your students would say he's very clingy.
I
Yeah.
actually had a situation at our school like that where two students that were dating and they're both very clingy. And the girl was like, he's too clingy for me, so she broke up with him and ended up the whole ordeal.
Yeah.
Very similar to that.
Yeah. So this is a real life situation for many of our students. Yeah. So these are great conclusions you all are drawing from these videos, great connections that you're making. And by asking just the questions like, what did you notice happening? Or you could even ask a question. Let's recall the order of events, right? Just get everybody clear about, okay, what is it that we're observing here? So the what questions, they're really informational. We're just asking for, let's get the facts, and then let's also engage our own reactions, okay? So we have what we observed up here. How did watching this video make you all feel? Anybody else annoyed?
I was overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed?
Mm-hmm.
I think it needs to be made clear to the students that this goes both ways. Girls do the same thing to boys.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Girls do the
Don't-
same thing to girls,
don't single anybody out.
probably the most frequent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to move us on to the so what portion, okay? Because you all are starting to make interpretations and draw conclusions. So, so one of those conclusions that you were drawing is that, yes, this is happening in this context, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or a male partner and a female partner, but this could happen in any kind of relationship. Let's see. Why do you think we did this activity? Why do you think we watched this video?
Because Through relationships, one of the main ways is us using our phones.
Yeah,
Kids use their phones.
yeah, our students use their phones all the time. Or, you know, if you were teaching this, you'd say, you all use your phones all the time. How might your phones be used to harass you? Or how might a partner use being in constant communication to make you feel unsafe?
I think through the lens of a child, I think a lot of times that's what they perceive their relationships are like. That equates to love. You know, I'm wanting, like, I mean, the guy was relentless, but that's like his way of showing love. It's not a real good attempt, but to him, hey, I want to be with you. I want to be around you. You know, that girl may not be able to recognize that.
Yeah, so that's a great topic of conversation to engage with this kind of video. How was this behavior from her boyfriend impacting the young woman in this
Her
case?
behavior was very,
She was not very receptive.
yes. She seemed very annoyed, very upset.
Yeah, she seemed annoyed and upset, yeah. And I think you're right that maybe the boyfriend was thinking, this is how I show love, but do you all agree? Do you think that's accurate?
There was actually just, a friend of mine told me that she had a friend where her boyfriend told her, the reason why I hit you is because I love you. You know, you don't think that I'm risking my freedom of going to jail because that's how much I love you to hit you. So, and I'm like, that's literally the same exact thing.
Yeah.
You get assistance from home, what they see,
Yeah, what they see at home, what they're,
or if they don't have
accepting.
that figure in their life, they're searching for it.
Yeah.
And they're going to extreme measures to find it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, when you were asking the question about our students, maybe when they're reflecting their self, thinking, I do that to my boyfriend or girlfriend, that seems annoying. Because whenever you tell your friend, that's annoying him doing that to you, she's like, well, and then when she sees it from our lens, you know, the other person's lens, like, oh, that does come across as annoying what we're doing. And then maybe he would say, oh, I guess I do hit her up 100 times throughout the day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good, you know, eye-opening experience for them to see somebody else doing it and what it looks like.
I think this is a good time to talk about communication styles, how people communicate different from other people, and how do you make it work if you're choosing to be in this relationship. You know, I think it's important to have a conversation with someone about, hey, this is too much for me, or I communicate this way because. So I think it's very important to understand the importance of communication when you're even having a friendship, because that could have easily been a friendship. We just assumed it was a relationship. We don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Except for the new pics. Well, maybe they ask their friends.
Well, yeah, no, I don't know. They can get out of hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thinking it's funny, like, haha, okay, you crossed the line. We're not
Yeah.
friends anymore.
Yeah. So I think that's a great takeaway. This is a nice lead into talking about communication. I think a question I would ask to lead into that is, so clearly we all seem to agree that the girl in the situation seems pretty annoyed or shut down by what her boyfriend is doing by constantly texting her. Why might it not be safe for her to tell him? Or why might it be hard for her to tell him, I don't want you to text me this often?
Who knows how he's going to react? I mean, he's pretty codependent on her. I mean, he's relentless. You don't know what he's going to do to her.
Yeah.
As she said, you know, the one guy felt compelled to physically assault her because that was some twisted way of showing my love. And his way of just communicating night and day, being with your friends is lame. You know, hey, I'd rather be with you. I'm waking you up in the morning. I'm talking to you before you go to bed. This is the way that I show love to him, you know.
Yeah, so it may be difficult for her to say something